Okay, so welcome today. I thought for this Facebook Live I'd introduce you also to the challenge that has gone live in our Facebook group, Crafting with Lisa Horton. It was my turn to set the challenge this month, and I've set the theme of sets of 3. So working in trios. It's always been a good design from a design point of view. We always sort of tend to group items and our focal points in groups of 3. Today I'm working on 3 ATC cards, but the theme can actually encompass whether you put 3 embellishments on your cards, whether you want to do 3 canvases or 3 ATCs. It's entirely up to you. I think it's just a nice number and should give you a different sort of dynamic to work with for your project. And also I've included everything that I do in my Facebook Live will be the sort of the giveaway at the end of the month when I come to choose the winner from all the entries. I'll send you each of my projects from each of my Facebook Lives through the month of June. So that should be 4. I think it'll be at least 4 projects. I don't know whether it will fall to a 5th or not. So I'm working on ATCs this week. To actually start these off, they actually begin as a masterboard. I didn't create each of the ATCs separately. The actual background is from a continuous piece from a masterboard, and then once I've sort of created the background, then I chop them up into the size of the ATCs. Now these are nice little sort of trading cards, and they're either a great way to display techniques or your different stamps, and just a really nice sort of collection point and a great way to trade with each other. Now ATCs generally they are a standard size, which is 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So I've already cut my strip of paper to 3.5 inches, and I'm just going to work along the strip, and then afterwards I shall just cut these down into the chunks that I like. Now today I'm actually going to be creating the background with the Mandala Stencils. So I have the 3 of them. They all come in, I've got 3 different patterns there. I used this one last week, so this week I shall go for one of the more intricate ones. I shall go for this one because it's got less open spaces, which for this design actually works really well then. So we shall use this intricate pattern, and I'm also, as always, be using the texture stamps, and I shall be using the trailing foliage, the ivy stamps designed by Anne Ruffles here. All are still in stock either on the Create and Craft website under Lisa Horton's brand, or on Lisa's her own website, which is thatcraftplace.co.uk, I think it is, but I'm sure somebody will put the links up in the comments for me. So I'm going to be starting off and creating the background. Once you run out of kitchen towel, with mind I shall use bear with me, I'm just looking for some paper towel. I thought I had some with me. No, that's okay. I shall use a cloth instead. Oh no, I found a piece. Sorry. Okay. Right, so I'm actually create the background. I actually used the Distress Oxide sprays. These are the colours that I'm using today. So we've got Milled Lavender, Shaded Lilac and Squeezed Lemonade. I also have the corresponding colours in the Distress Oxide ink pads and the Distress ink pads also. So it's just sort of a case of playing and sort of picking up what I fancy using at the time. Now these Distress Oxide sprays actually need a good shake before you use them, because the pigment actually collects at the bottom. So you can see what I'm sort of creating there. So real summary affair with these colours. I really like the pastel colours. I don't do bolds very well. That's certainly down to a couple of other members of the design team. Natasha does bold colours brilliantly. One of these days I will try it. So all I'm doing is just spraying the Distress Oxides onto the card. Now, obviously we don't want these too wet because we don't want to, we need these to sort of be able to work on them quite quickly. So I'm going to mop the majority of that up. Now if you put quite a thin layer on, they do dry quick enough, so I'm just going to give that a quick blast just to take away the moisture from the surface there before I add another colour. I sort of alternate between drying from the top and the bottom, because whenever you apply the heat to any sort of card, it does make it sort of warp a little bit. So if you can just alternate by drying it sort of from top and bottom and then just sort of bending it back into shape, you just minimise that bending just a little bit. So that was milled lavender that I put on initially. Now I'm going to go in with the shaded lilac. Now what I'm doing each time, I'm just sort of dabbing away a lot of the colours, because that just gives me the nice sort of more airbrushed look. That's the look that I prefer. Now I'm just going to go to the end of the masterboard here. I forgot to. I should just do that from a distance so that actually there we are. Okay, I should just give that another dry. I find also by dabbing away a lot of the colour with a tissue, that takes a lot of the moisture, sort of some of the when the inks sort of puddle on the top, that just takes that away and lets it dry a lot quicker. I'm working on the usual card that I work with, which is like a good heavyweight mixed media card, which is more like a watercolour card. So you can see already that this is going to actually work out quite different in colour to what I created initially. I hope that's not in shadow too much, so you'll be getting... Okay. Now I'm going to go in with some of my inks now. So I shall use the Distress ink in the same three colours. I'm going to start introducing some of the mandala elements here. So I shall use my blending sponge and just start blending through the mandala stencil. Start creating some of the elements in the background here. Now, depending on how heavy you've gone with your background to start with, will depend on what colours you actually use to actually start putting the stencil elements in the background here. I'm using the mandala, obviously, purely because they're my newest stencils. We always like to play with our newest stash, don't they? But any of the stencils that Lisa's already bought out will be perfect to use. And I'm not using the whole of the stencil, I'm just using elements of that and just moving them randomly across the card here. Because what I hope to do is when I actually cut this strip up into the ATC size, in the 2.5 inch widths, I want to create some sort of continuity between each of the cards, so this sort of mandala strip here would be sort of cut in half, and it just gives sort of some continuity to the background, so it looks like the actual ATs are part of a set. I think that's a really nice look. Now I'm going to come in with some of the squeezed lemonade as well, just to add an alternative colour into that. And I'm blending the colours over each other. Hopefully you can see there. You can see sort of the elements of the mandala sort of creeping in to the background. Again, I'm saying because I'm working with pastel colours, these have got a really nice summery feel to them, but any colours, any of your colour systems would work using this. So if you did want to go bold, that would work also. You could also actually use your sprays through the stencils instead of blending the ink, so that would be another way to layer your colour and layer your textures. That would be a good way of doing that. This just gives you a really good opportunity to play with the patterns and play with your inks and create different layers. So I'm just layering on different colours here as I go. As I pull that away, you should be able to see that sort of subtly in the background. I quite like the introduction of the yellow in places, so I shall just do another section here. This time I might do sort of more of the centre part of the mandala. It's slightly lighter at this end as well, so you could also use your oxides to blend the colours onto here. That would give you a nice chalky feel. I'm using the regular distress inks because I find that these colours were less muddy layering them like this, but it's entirely up to you. It's whatever you're happy to work with. And use different colours within sort of one stencil sort of sitting, as it were, because that will give you like an airbrushed effect with, as one colour sort of merges from the purple, the lilac that I used in the middle here, into this milled lavender shade, and they'll actually blend really lovely through all the different elements of the stencil there. And I think I'll add a bit of yellow. There we are. Oh, that's really pretty. Can you see that there? So this gives us a really nice background to be able to work on. Then obviously how you cut this up afterwards will give it completely different looks. You don't always have to sort of use the ends. Now what I'm going to use next, I'm going to come in with the, is it hickory smoke, or shall I use the hickory smoke? It's like a greyish colour, and I'm going to use the text stamp from the background collection, the texture set. I'm not going to put this on the block because I want this to sort of go quite random, so I'm just going to create a section of it like this and just stamp randomly over the board like this, and you can see how it's adding just little areas of text, all the sort of different shapes and sizes. And if you do it, some of it off the page as well. And if we perhaps create a longer section by just using the. So at this stage we just want to sort of create random sections of pattern there, and this all builds up to create all the layers. I will also go in with this textured stamp, and I think this is a really nice way to build up sort of pattern and depth And what I quite like to do is use a darker colour and just use this around the edges. Can you see here? That creates sort of almost like a shadow effect. And I quite like that around the edge. I think I might try and sort of mix and blend the colours as well. So this is a really good technique to do when you don't have the stamp on a block. And ideally with these textures, these can be used either way around. Although this text can't be read, you tend to sort of have this in this sort of orientations, it goes down. But with these splatter type ones, you can use any elements of the stamp. So just build that up. Now some of these colours, because they are pale, they possibly won't stamp on, but give it a try and see what works for you. It's always good to have like a set of 3 colours that go together, and then a really neutral colour, whether it be a black or a greyish type colour, just to create like shadow effects. That's the way that I like to work. That's how I generally, well, that's the theory that I use to choose my colours. You can see that's building up. How much pattern on you want to have on also is entirely up to you. That's down to your eye. Now what I want to do, I want to create a little bit more sort of colour. So I'm going to use some of these squeezed lemonade. I'm just going to put that onto my messy mat. As you can see, I'm using Lisa's messy mat, which is perfect. You can, because it's white background, you can actually see the colours that you're putting down. Because I won't be doing any cutting with a knife or anything today, I'll put that over my glass mat. I'm just going to wet that down slightly, because what I want to do is pick this up with one of these like fantail brushes. And you can pick these up from most art shops, most people have one. But what I want to do is just pick some of that ink up. I should just take another brush or just something just to knock that with. Make that quite wet, and I just want to create sort of splatters of ink here. So this works when the ink is sort of quite runny. You may not be able to see this on the page, but this is actually creating the splatters, and this sort of adds to the depth that you have. Now you can either do this with ink or like acrylic paint if you want this to be more a bolder colour. I think Natasha does this quite a lot with her finished products. I think it's quite a really nice effect. Alternatively, if you can't get that to work for you, then you can just stamp the splats onto your finished piece here. Lisa's already thought of that for us. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do, which actually perhaps I should have done beforehand, I want to just take my mist, just a mist of water, and you can either just by splatting with water from your fingers, or just to create fine mist. We just leave that to settle on top of onto the distress ink just for a second, and then what we can do, we can start dabbing that away, and the ink will react with the water and create like bleached effects. Now I've possibly needed to add sort of bigger droplets for that to work. But I'll tell you what, creating one of these masterboards, it really is all about playing, and you just create the background. It just gives you a chance to use some techniques. Actually, you can perhaps see there where it's just bleached slightly. It's something that you'd actually notice in person more, so whoever wins the challenge this month, they'll have the choice of whether they want the original ATCs or the ones that I create today, because they will turn out slightly different. Now, what I'm going to do, I shall take my cutter, and this is where I start deciding which parts of the ATCs of this board that I would actually want to keep. So I'm going to cut, I've already got the size in 3.5 inches, so I'm going to cut them into the 2.5 strips now. I quite like this piece because it's got a lot of the mandala on there. You can see the background pattern. And I think what I'll do, I want to incorporate sort of this sort of larger strip. So I'm actually going to cut this straight, the first 3 pieces. And I'll show you in a second. Actually, I'll cut the 3rd one there because I'll probably use this for another piece later on. So you can see now I have my 3 pieces. You can see that when I put these 2 together, this pattern comes back into play, and I really like the fact that it's broken up, but you know that it's still part of the same board. That's what I like to see from a background. Again, it's entirely up to you, and you may use completely different stencils and it would look really different. I'm just feeling they're a little bit damp, but that should be okay. Now this is where we can start working on each of the individual ATCs as an individual piece. So this time I'm going to use this washi tape for the original cards because they turn out paler. I used this slightly pinkier washi tape, which is like, it's a pinky peachy colour, but it just worked really well with the background. Now these ones are quite lilac-y, so I think I might go with this other washi tape that Lisa's brought with us to us. And you can see as you open it up, we've actually got the different colours as you go along, so it might actually be quite nice to choose different sections. So I'm going to create a piece that goes across like that. Now I like to be quite generous with the amount of washi tape I put on the back, because that, as it bends round, that sort of keeps that quite tight and neat on the back. So we have one piece there, and I also put a piece on the last section here. Now you can see with the way that the colours I've used this time round that this washi tape works perfectly. I mean, look, there's even elements of blue. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to add some of that blue. Now that I've pulled that out and I've seen that, so I can just change up the colours a little bit. Look at that. Isn't that glorious? I love that. And the beauty of actually working with washi tape, it does pull away from the project quite easily. So if you do change your mind, like I did just then, you can, before you've sort of stuck it down firmly, you can change your mind. So look at that, we have completely different look on either side, but it works really well. Now, I've already stamped out and fussy cut a couple of the ivy designs from Anne's trailing foliage set here. So I've used this one here, which I just like is a really standalone piece, which I can stamp and apply onto this card here. Now I've really gone to town with the fussy cutting. I've really cut into the fine details of these ivy leaves, because I really like the fact that you have the open space in between, so that really makes this look quite delicate. And I've coloured these with alcohol markers, and I'll just show you how I colour these. I colour these sort of quite with pale colours this time. Obviously they are ivy leaves, and you can do them in the green. I do like to use a little bit of artistic licence, and I've gone with purple just to make them blend into my project. So because I've used a hybrid ink pad, it means that I can use my alcohol markers straight over this and colour without that ink bleeding. And I like to stamp in the grey because it doesn't make the image too bold, and you can actually use your colouring to make these images stand out. So I don't do anything fancy, not on this, not colouring for these anyway. I just add elements of green. Like so. I should have perhaps done these beforehand. Now just using the same colour and just going over and relayering, it actually gives you enough sort of depth with your colour as it is, and a bit of shading. You can see that is just so delicate and actually fits really well onto this size of ATC. So add some glue. It doesn't need too much, and I'm just going to add that into there. And while that's sitting there drying in place, I'm just going to add a little bit more layering of colour, this time with a lilac onto the ivy leaves. Just add a little bit more shading. I'm going to leave that to dry for a second. I'm just going to work on this final piece, on this third piece here. And here I've used the larger of the stamps, but all I've done, let me take that out of there. I haven't stamped the whole image. I've just cut away. You can see how that fits on there. I haven't used this part of the image because obviously it would be too big to sit on here. I just wanted to use some of this because I really like the way that it trailed around the corner. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to snip the rest of that away because it is still actually too big, and I'm going to snip that from there. And I can use them leaves for another project. I just like the way that that sits across the corner. You'll probably gather from watching me on other Facebook Lives that I do like to snip into the designs. I don't always use the whole image as it's given. I do obviously on some projects, but not on all of them. I think it's just a good reminder that's just how you can make all of these designs work for you. If you think that perhaps some of these designs are perhaps too big, say I wouldn't get flustered by that at all, or you can snip into the designs and make them work for you. You really can. Now I'm going to add this onto here before I colour it because you can see how delicate these are. I really took the time to fussy cut these out. I quite like the fact that this piece extends over the edge of the card also. Okay, I'm just going to colour this quickly, and you can just see how quick this is to colour. And this colour actually blends really well with the rest of the card. You can obviously take your time depending on the theme that the card that you're making. Just that slight bit of green adds a different element. You don't need too much. If I go back in with the pink, you can see how that starts adding some shading to your flowers. So you don't need a huge amount of colours if you're just starting out. And perhaps be a little bit intimidated by all the colours of alcohol pens, or you're wondering which ones to buy to start with. The nature of the way these alcohol pens work, you can actually just start off with a couple of colours. Possibly your favourite colours, the ones that you like to work with most. That would be my advice. You can see there that you've actually got some dimension and shading, and that will blend itself nicely as that dries. Now this centrepiece, I want to do something different. I'm going to come back to my stencil. How am I doing for time? Okay, so I'm going to come back with my stencil, and I just want to create a different element to this middle card. So let me just move those out the way. I want to do a little bit of clear embossing. Now I'm going to put that, I'm not necessarily going to follow where I've stamped in the background here. Can we match that up? We can't actually match that up at this stage, not that that matters too much. But what I'm going to do, I've actually got this new Distress embossing dabber. All this is a clear embossing ink, but it's in a dabber form. If you don't have this, what you can do, you can take, I don't have my ink pad with me, but you can take your clear embossing ink pad, here it is, and you can take a sponge. Actually, let's do that because possibly most people have that and it'll have the same effect. You can take a sponge or one of your blending sponges like this if you've got one allocated, and what you can do, you can actually dab the embossing ink through the stencil. Now work this in quite well because we want to make sure we actually get the ink through all the elements there. And some of these elements are actually quite fine. So I'm just going to work that in. With this you can actually press quite hard because you actually want that clear ink, which is like a glue that will grab your embossing powder. You want that to go through all those elements. So has that worked in there? I think that's worked. Now take a piece of trying to find a piece of clean paper. So I tend to reuse my pieces of copy paper. Now you take your clear ink, which I've put it there, and then we just sprinkle over the design. I don't know if you'll be able to pick this up. Perhaps if I do that, you can actually see the design of the mandala sitting there in embossing powder. Let's wait for my... Oh yes, you can. Just about pick that up there. So I'm just looking up my iPad screen, which is just a couple of seconds delay to what I'm doing. I'm just going to put that to one side, hopefully, and then I shall get my embossing tool, the heat tool, and we're just going to heat that. What this will do, because it's clear, it will just give you a really nice glaze to this ATC, and it just brings another element of the mandala in. And hopefully I'll be able, this will show up on camera. If I heat that from below, perhaps you can see that turning. Excuse me, I'm just going to use, there we are, use my tweezers so I don't burn my fingers. If I hold that like that, can you see that turning? I really like this effect. It really gives a nice sort of that glazed look in the background without being too far, you know, too much in your face. It gives you that look of really expensive cards that you'd buy from a shop. Now, can you see, if I just tilt that, and hopefully you'll just catch that in the light. Can you see that? Oh yes, you can, look. Isn't that clever? I just think that's just really, really clever. And and it still amazes me that I can get that sort of effect at home. I never. So you can see that it sort of intensifies the colour a little bit in the background, doesn't it? Now I've got another couple of little elements from the trailing foliage set here from Anne's set. These are meant to be like little ivy berries, which I think are meant to be white, but I don't think I've ever used them for that so far. Oops, sorry, Anne. I will do one of these days. I just like finding alternative uses for these images, especially for the tiny stamps as well. They are so useful. I'm just going to colour that in quickly. And she's quite nice to show you the colouring in real time, because it just proves that you don't have to spend hours on your colouring. Obviously there are times that it's so therapeutic just to sit down and colour and just take your mind off of everything, and I have those times too, but certainly on some projects just adding colour sort of quickly is just as effective. So I'm going to add these to the bottom here. Make those blend in by adding a little bit of green, so they match these other two elements either side. I shall just add a little bit of shading in there with the purple. What might be quite nice with these little elements also is if you perhaps have a sparkly embossing powder, or even you have some of Lisa's mermaid tails, or this, I'm not sure what it's called actually, the really fine micro glitter, particularly the ones that Lisa's just brought out, just to add a little bit of glue, perhaps with a really like a quickie glue pen, and you can add sort of really glittery elements to these as well, just to add a certain bit of texture. I think that might look quite nice. Now I'm going to use these worded sheets. Now these ones I'm actually using the white ones these times. I could, because these are white, you could actually tint these to actually match, colour match, or add a contrast to these cards that we've made this time, but I think I quite like the pop of white. Let me decide what it is I'm going to use. I shall use I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this one sentiment here, and I'm going to split it in three so it reads across all three ATCs. Now I'm using my big scissors again. I think somebody mentioned these last week. These are brilliant for this sort of thing. Now you'll notice this time that I'm actually cropping the worded sentiments quite close to the word, so they're actually quite slim this time. I think that just keeps that more in keeping with the ATCs that I've made here. Now I'm going to crop this into three so it reads across all three cards. Because it's quite a larger sentiment, so I'm going to put those on like that. And I think that pop of white just looks really nice against the pastel backgrounds. I don't know if you agree. Now these makes these quite fiddly. This is where your tweezers will come into play. Actually, particularly the tweezers that Lisa bought to us last time. Did you see those? That new set with the pokey tool, or the pickup tool, wasn't it? I think they were pink with really fine tweezers. I think they were lovely. I think they may have to fall into my shopping basket very soon if there's any left. Particularly as the last pickup tool I've got was a nice greeny shade. I think I might have to get the pink one and start collecting. Or is that just a little bit naughty? Who knows? You can never have too many tools, can you? It's quite nice to get a nice little treat coming through the post, isn't it, from the postman? Okay, so I should pick those up and put those on there. So although I'm working on 3 different ATCs here, I'm actually sort of treating them as one project as a whole. Now to finish these off, I'm going to add some of these lovely pearls. Look at these pearlescent ones, they're just gorgeous. Now what colours? I used the pink colours on these ones, and I think I might go for the same this time round. This is where I need my pickup tool. Oh, picking up the colours that I don't want, and I shall go for 3 in keeping with the challenge. I shall go with 3 on each, I think. This is where I need to find the 3 small ones. 1, 2, 3. Actually, I'll just pick these out so you can just see how that final project looks. I won't stick these on, I shall do that after the camera's stopped rolling. Ooh. And I can see one more just sitting there. I really like these peachy ones, they're so unusual. I don't often see pearlised embellishments in that sort of colour. I think I might have to devise a project to use them. They are gorgeous. Maybe that can be next week's challenge to myself for the Facebook Live. What do you reckon? Oh, that one goes on there. Okay, what I'll do, I'll just set these in place. And I think what I'll do, I think I'll use this trail of pearls to guide you to each of the sentiments there. I think that works really nicely. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'll stick those down at a later date. So there we are, we have 3 ATCs, say in the same style, but they look completely different to what I created as the sample. And at the end of June, when I bundle these up with my other Facebook's lives, I'll ask the winner which colourway they prefer, because they actually worked out quite different, didn't they? I shall post up photos of these and post them photos of them both together so you can actually see the difference. Let's see. I hope you've enjoyed that today. Something a little bit different for me. I can't wait to see what you create, and hopefully you can post them into the group for us, because I know us as a design team, we all enjoy seeing your makes and seeing your ideas. Obviously we get to use these products first, and we have a great time sort of showing each other what we've created, and the samples that get made for Lisa's shows are absolutely fantastic, but we also love to see what you create with them as well. So if you make anything, do sort of tag us in so we can see them as well. Oh, hi Mum, nice to see you here. Hi Christine and Elizabeth and Heidi, lovely to see you all. Okay, I think I'll love you and leave you there, let you get back to the afternoon. Thanks for joining me today, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next ET Live. Take care everyone, bye.